Well, the fantasy of Russian collusion continues to dominate American political life. It doesn't matter that almost nobody actually believes any of it and never has. Proving non-existent collusion was never the point of the exercise. The point, obviously, was blame shifting. Hillary didn't lose the election. The political establishment wasn't completely out of touch with voters. The media weren't embarrassingly wrong about everything. Nope, none of that happened. Putin did it. It's his fault. It all began as a psychological exercise, a way for a stunned ruling class to feel better about itself in the face of humiliating loss. But from there, the Russia story became a handy way to hamstring a young and honestly disorganized administration. Has Donald Trump spent a single day in office not responding to this ludicrous conspiracy theory? Probably not. And that was by design. You know all this by now. It's contemptible and dishonest. But the looming question is all of this becoming dangerous to the rest of us? Russia isn't just a CNN topic. It's not just a script on MSNBC. It's an actual country with borders and millions of people and one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world. So you would think we would tread carefully when it really came down to it, because there's no advantage in exacerbating our rivalry with Russia pointlessly. There's an obvious downside to it, war in which millions could die. And yet our leaders seem intent on driving us toward actual confrontation with the actual country of Russia. Congress, bipartisan coalition in Congress, is united for some reason behind passing more and deeper sanctions against Russia. Why? Because it's immoral not to. Shut up, they explained. In Syria, meanwhile, which is a client state of Russia, U.S. airstrikes reportedly have killed hundreds of Russians. The media are crying for more blood. Okay. But is this advancing any serious American interest? Not that we can see. But as long as we're picking fights with Russia, everyone in Washington can retroactively justify the mindless Mueller investigation. This is lunacy, but it could very soon get very scary. Richard Goodstein is an attorney. He advised both of Hillary Clinton's campaigns, and he joins us now. Richard, really simple question. And I ask this of every decision our government makes. I think we all should. What is America's national interest in confronting Russia in the way that we are?
I'm going to answer that with a question and then a kind of more of an answer. Is Donald Trump acting like an innocent person as regards Russia?
I wonder, let me ask you a question. Do you realize how profoundly the Trump administration has degraded the moral sense of its opponents? People who decried McCarthyism for 50 years are now engaging in it with no self-awareness that they are. They're accusing people of betraying their country simply because they're not saying the right things, aren't denouncing our enemies vigorously enough. This is insane. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, Trey Gowdy, who's the Republican committee chairman, is the person who says, if you're innocent, start acting like it.
What any Republican says. I'm asking as a citizen, what is the point of all this? How do we benefit?
Well, there's 2 points. One, as regards Syria, we're dealing with a war criminal who I think, if left uncontained, will do more of what he's done already.
Do what to us?
Well, what he's doing is basically empowering others like him to say, you know what, the U.S. is kind of backtracking from doing what it has done historically, which is take on war criminals, Milosevic, et cetera, and every would-be war criminal in the world is kind of looking at this and going, well, I guess I can probably get away with the same kind of genocide that Assad is.
We have war criminals in our own hemisphere. China is taking over Latin America and the Caribbean. Venezuela has collapsed. El Salvador is collapsing. Mexico has a drug war that's killed more people than we lost in Vietnam. The world in our hemisphere, our neighbors, contiguous countries are collapsing, and we're ignoring that for the sake of some weird war in Syria 6,000 miles from here. Does this seem a little off to you?
Well, as I said to you before, because we can't deal with every incidence of war criminalization doesn't mean we have to back away from dealing with Syria.
Why wouldn't we deal with Maduro in Venezuela first? Well, Maduro destroyed a first-world country, almost first-world country.
Well, again, I think that the Middle East is seen as more of a tinderbox. But let me ask you.
I want you to answer, why should I, as a taxpayer and the father of a son, draft-age son, feel like this is helping my country, my people? What is this about? What's in it for us?
There's no draft, so your son doesn't have to worry about a draft.
I don't know. It could get out of control. We're getting to the brink.
Okay, I would take issue with that. I think that's kind of hyping something. And I think your viewers shouldn't buy into the notion that somehow or other we're just on this precipice of being at a shooting war with Russia directly. And as regards why we should concern ourselves with where the Mueller connection is, honestly, I think they're totally disconnected. I mean, you talk about the fantasy of collusion, let me say in 10 seconds. Russia offered help. Donald Jr., love it, we'll take it. The Russians gave help, WikiLeaks, and Donald Trump mentioned it 100 times on the campaign trail. So I'm sorry if that seems like a fantasy to you. It's very real.
Right, very real, extremely real. And I'm sorry for hyping the threat of Russia. I didn't mean to do that. I was just listening to Eric Swalwell, Democrat of California, a foreign adversary that attacked us. Adam Schiff, also of California, unprecedented attack on us. We are at war. An attack on our country by Russia, says Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland.
Yeah.
Democrats, for over a year, have told us we're at war with Russia. This is insane.
Right.
And now we're actually moving toward a shooting war with Russia, and they're still saying this crap.
Well, what's not insane is, frankly, the characterization, which I think Dick Cheney, not a left-wing loony, kind of characterized as well, that all these attacks of Russia to undermine our democracy were the equivalent of an act of war, to undermine the integrity of our system.
So now you're quoting Dick Cheney. Let me just ask you a question. If you really believe that the president likely colluded, we're at war, then why would you be against a shooting war? You're obviously in favor of this lunacy in Syria where we're taking on a war criminal, as you said. Yeah. But that could easily escalate in ways I don't need to explain because they're so obvious into an actual shooting war with Russians. We've already killed hundreds of them, apparently. Yeah. Pompeo's bragging about it. Why would you be against that? You're for that.
I have zero confidence. I don't know what you have. I have zero confidence in Donald Trump's judgment to basically run the country in a shooting war with Russia. You might have some. I don't. I bet even most of your viewers
Why are you and other liberals, Bill Kristol, Nikki Haley, all the left in Washington, pushing Trump into war with Russia?
So are we talking wag the dog? I mean, look, unless Trump has information from his military that certain action is called for, the notion that somehow he's responding to political impulses from left or right or what have you to move into Syria or to take on the Russians militarily, that's incompetent. That's the dereliction of duty. That's impeachable.
You're pushing him. You're doing it on this show. Your allies are doing it on CNN, MSNBC. The whole establishment's doing it on Twitter. Fight in Syria. That's a war against Russia. That is a proxy state of Russia. Why are you guys doing that?
Well, again, I don't think they're talking about fighting in Syria any more than we fought in Kosovo and Bosnia. I mean, we did bomb, we did degrade,
we have
but
2,000 troops there. He tried to pull them out, and everyone on the left yelped and jumped up and down.
But that's different from a full-fledged war taking over the country. I think there's a big difference.
We just lost a guy. Hundreds of Russians have died. It sounds like a war to me.
And there's a big difference between degrading Assad versus getting into a full-fledged war.
I hope you're right, because this is starting to scare me. Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
Republican